Namaste everyone and welcome to Supergrads Cat. Today we'll be discussing the way to fill the part B of the SPJIMR form which is available to all the shortlisted candidates. So SPJIMR PI, may you are expected to fill a form which is given the title part B. In fact, I'll move ahead and discuss this part straight away that you would have all received a mail if you are shortlisted for the SPJ, and the shortlist was released yesterday, and Form B may they have clearly mentioned that please complete Form B and submit the same latest by Tuesday 16th of Jan 24 end of day. So understand कि today is 13th or 16th of January end of day तक आपको ये form submit कर देना है. So it's very important for you to make sure that you start the process of filling this form. There are some very interesting and very different questions. In fact, this form is unlike most of the other forms that you would have filled so far. तो अभी तक आपने जो भी फॉर्म्स देखे होंगे भरे होंगे उनसे बहुत अलग लेवल का ये फॉर्म है. आपको बहुत सारा थॉट देना पड़ेगा in terms of getting ideas as to what to write in some of the interesting questions that they have asked. And this has been the history for SPJ, that they have had some fabulous questions in their CV form that they tend to ask. Also note that the last date to upload all the documents is also 16th of Jan. Also, it is imperative that Form B is completed and documents are uploaded by the deadline to participate. Booking of interview slot has already started as of today at 12 noon. So you are expected to book your slots. If you have not yet done so, please do it, because they have clearly mentioned that slot booking is strictly on a first come first serve basis. तो अगर आप लेट हो जाएंगे slot booking में, don't give it too much of a time so that you are left with less number of choices. First come first serve basis पे ही slot booking है, तो make sure that you take due care to book the slots accordingly. As I said earlier as well, if you have any questions, please type in the comments and we'll try our best to reply to them as soon as possible. But please make a note of these deadlines, ये important है. हम straight away questions पे चलते हैं. So this is how your typical screenshot of the form will look like. There'll be some family details, some personal summary, and then finally documents to upload. Because the visibility of the screenshot is not that great, I have taken these questions in a separate slide so that visibility is better. So the very first question is very interesting, and it has been the history for SPJN form. In fact, a lot of alumni who are pass outs or are currently studying at SPJN would relate to this question a lot. State 10 random things, statements about you. Each statement should not be more than 10 words. A few examples are. तो ये काफी different question है. There are a lot of interesting inputs that you can share. So let's have a look. This is the question, and in fact, we'll go question by question. So first question is state 10 random things. In fact, it's a good activity for anyone who's watching this video. अगर आपका SPJN का call है नहीं है, doesn't matter. आप MBA अगले साल करोगे, you're an aspirant for next year, maybe next to next year. In fact, you're not an MBA aspirant at all. आपका कोई लेना देना ही नहीं है MBA admission process से. Despite all these things, I'll say कि एक ऐसा question है that one should think about in general to understand oneself better. So 10 random things या statements, हर एक statement 10 words से ज्यादा बड़ा ना हो. उसके कुछ few examples they've shared. In another life, I was an RJ. Imagine you're sharing this in your CV form, and then there'll be questions on this that in another life, maybe on a different planet, I was a radio jockey, an RJ, or maybe an RJ can mean different things to you as well. I own a T-shirt that says, and then you can include a quote that your T-shirt says, "I wish I was a bird. Maybe I could fly higher and higher and be free." I believe in the concept of it's one life, and therefore do whatever you would wish to do, because at the end of the day it's just one life. So ऐसी कुछ interesting चीजें हैं that you can share. In fact, what I've done is I've collated few interesting one-liners that you can use about your own self to get ideas from. Again, एक strong recommendation. Next slide पे जो आपको hints या prompts मिलेंगे to answer this question about the 10 random things, please don't use them as it is. They are shared with you. In fact, I don't believe in the idea of sharing a typical response or an answer, but this was one question that I have realized over a period of years that a lot of students struggle with. कि सर क्या चीजें लिखे, हमें thoughts ही नहीं मिल रहे, वो 10 चीजें fun things नहीं मिल रही, interesting चीजें नहीं मिल रही. Should we just write about our standard CV that we have created? क्या वैसे उसी के बारे में लिख दें? So I'm going to share a lot of interesting one-liners that you can share, but please don't copy. And think hard about your own life. try and identify what is it that you can share and then create those 10 pointers. So I've curated a list of 5 interesting pointers. Very interesting. In fact, I'll just spend 10 odd seconds on every line. I love a good power nap. Now, you might expect questions on some of these one-liners that you'll share about in the first question. So, आपको 10 ही choose करना है. I've broadly put up 20 odd different one-liners that you can take hints from. So maybe you can mention this perfectly fine. You love a good power nap. You can recite lyrics for few Bollywood songs from the 80s or maybe 70s or 60s or 50s. Anything on these lines is perfectly fine. So आपको कुछ lyrics आती हैं. You are into music, you create your own lyrics, you are a rapper, you can rap, and therefore you would want to mention that. Perfectly fine. तो आप ये भी share कर सकते हो. ठीक है, तो मेक श्योर दैट ये वाला पार्ट वेर यू से दैट यू कैन रिसाइट लिरिक्स फॉर फ्यू बॉलीवुड ओल्ड सॉन्ग्स, अगेन इंटरेस्टिंग इंस्पिरेशन फॉर यू टू टेक फ्रॉम एंड अंडरस्टैंड की इज देयर एनीथिंग on similar lines that you can say about your own profile. I aspire to write a novel before turning 25. So again, an interesting highlight in terms of aspirations or ambitions that you have, that you wish to uh, write a novel before turning 25. इन्हीं को लेकर और क्या इंस्पिरेशन मिल सकती है? You want to create something which has not been created so far, but maybe by the age of 40, 50, 60, you would want to do that. So it can be any activity as well. You want to bungee jump by the time you're 40. So maybe go to a certain place and have that adrenaline rushing for you when you take up such adventurous activities. So ऐसी कुछ activities या चीजें आप इसमें मेंशन कर सकते हो that you wish to do in case you're not able to find something that has already happened in your life. Maybe you can project something that you wish to do in the near or the long term future. In terms of skill set, if you can solve a 3x3 Rubik's Cube within 60 seconds, now I've given it 60 seconds because typically this is the time that I take, or I struggle with arrangement sometimes. In fact, the world record is close to 3.13 seconds if I'm not wrong. तो 3 सेकंड में लोग 3x3 का रूबिक्स क्यूब फिनिश कर देते हैं. ऐसे में what is the typical time that you would want to take is something that you can put on. So I'm very bad with logic, but maybe you are good at something. So you can also include some other interesting things. For example, if your hobby is skipping, so skipping में you are able to skip the rope multiple times in a short span of time. So ऐसे कुछ interesting anecdotes या stories one line में आप लिख सकते हो. You have traveled to a certain place outside of India, within India. So instead of just writing the name of the particular city, you can mention this, that I have traveled to the land of midnight sun. I hope all of you know very common reference to country Norway. तो अगर आप नॉर्वे ट्रैवल कर चुके हो तो ऐसा कुछ लिख सकते हो. किसी और कंट्री ट्रैवल कर चुके हो तो उसकी जो हाईलाइट है, rather than in a plain language just sharing that I've traveled to US, you can mention something which is different and catches attention of the panel. You believe in the concept, because in the previous slide that I shared, they have shared examples जहाँ पे they have mentioned few things like I believe in some philosophy. So if you believe in the philosophy of time travel, you can mention this. There'll be questions on why do you believe in time travel and what are your thoughts? Is it scientifically possible in the near future that we'll be able to achieve that, and so on and so forth. You believe in the concept of afterlife, anything on these lines. So ऐसे कुछ interesting parts हैं जो आप mention कर सकते हो. I invented my own board game of logic and luck. So this is again an interesting insight about you. अगर आपने ऐसा कुछ invention किया है जहाँ पर we all know the commonly played games, playing cards, और playing cards के अंदर variation of different games. Typically people play snakes and ladders, Ludo, business, Monopoly. There is Jenga, n number of different games. I'm sure all of us have played since childhood. You have created a game of your own which was based on logic and luck. So this can be an interesting thing where everybody in your friend circle, family used to play, or there was some variation of Monopoly that you created, and so on and stuff. So this is an interesting idea. I'm just giving you thoughts to brainstorm and come up with important one-liners जो आपके SPJIMR में stand out होगा आपके CV form में. Because I've shared this earlier as well. Before you even get to interact with them, this form gets to interact with them, and therefore creates the first impression. So आपका form will speak volumes about who you are, and they are giving you this opportunity to speak about who you are in the form of now answers that you are expected to share. 10 statements सोचने हैं, 10 random statements. बहुत बड़ा नंबर होता है 10. बहुत सारी इंटरेस्टिंग चीजें आप यूज कर सकते हो. So things like I can recite the entire 18th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, 11th chapter. कुछ ना कुछ लोगों की ऐसी interesting activities बचपन से की हुई रहती है where they have memorized not just the chapter but the meaning and the interpretations and the lessons that you can apply in management or something on these lines. ऐसा अगर आप कुछ कर सकते हो from any particular text, I've taken a particular example, but कोई भी text का अगर आप कुछ ऐसा, for example, some people who are very good with communication skills. I had one student who was able to remember close to 200 proverbs or sayings. So when you say proverbs or saying, let's take an example. All that glitters is not gold is one of the sayings. है ना, हर चमकती हुई चीज सोना नहीं होती, is a very famous cliched saying, so to say. So ऐसे जितने standard proverbs और sayings हैं, that candidate wrote that he is able to remember or recollect more than 200 proverbs or sayings. So ऐसा कुछ आप इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट जो आपकी पर्सनालिटी का है वो शेयर कर सकते हो. आई एम अ पर्टिकुलर सेलिब्रिटीज फैन, सो आई एम अ ड्वेन जॉनसन फैन, सो टू से द रॉक. तो WWE से इंस्पायर होके आई स्टार्टेड फॉलोइंग हिम एंड देन आई फॉलोड हिम इन हॉलीवुड एंड बियॉन्ड एज वेल. सो ऐसा कोई सेलिब्रिटी का पर्टिकुलर मेंशन आप कर सकते हो दैट यू आर फैन ऑफ अ पर्टिकुलर सेलिब्रिटी. इट कैन बी इंडियन, इट कैन बी फॉरेन, एनीबडी. आई मीन person that you get inspired from. It can be Mr. Ratan Tata, it can be Honorable Prime Minister, anyone that you feel that you will want to share. इसमें there is nothing to think कि अच्छा मैं अगर इनका बोलूंगा तो मेरा सिलेक्शन का चांस बढ़ेगा. नहीं, that is a personal calling. It's your liking. So whether you like red color or blue color has no relevance in terms of deciding whether to select you or not. So similarly, आप किन सेलिब्रिटी को पसंद करते हो is just an insight about who you are. So please be as honest and as genuine as possible. ये एक इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट है in terms of activities that you can share if you are somebody who's into kites. So I have cut 20 other kites in a single day during the kite festival. So currently this is the season for Makar Sankranti, celebrated very enthusiastically in a lot of places in the country. So if you feel कि you are someone who is a kite enthusiast, and I also got to know that there is a concept called kite running. Kite running is a concept जहाँ पे जब आप पतंग उड़ा रहे हो और किसी की पतंग कट जाती है, तो जो कटी हुई पतंग है उसको कैच करने के लिए there is a entire group of people, kids running after to catch that particular kite. In fact, kite competitions are famous across not just India but also Afghanistan, China, Russia, and so on and so forth. So kite competitions में if you have participated and you feel कि छत पे जाके मैंने पतंग उड़ाई और दूसरों की बहुत पतंगे काटी हैं, so to say, you can mention that in a very formal and professional tone, which is fun to read and also an interesting insight into the kind of person you are. You have traveled in a general compartment bogie for a 36-hour long train journey. ऐसा कुछ आपको करना पड़ा है. You had to reach a particular location और बाकी tickets available नहीं थे. Maybe it was the festival season, but you had to get back home or travel to somebody else's place, and you have traveled. So you can then share, in case the question comes in the interview stage, you can share insights about what were the challenges you faced, how was the journey like, what have you learned, and so on and so forth. So interesting चीज है. I love chai and philosophical conversation. So interesting use of language here. In fact, कोई ना कोई figure of speech use हो रहा होगा इसमें. So I love chai. That's one part of a tangible thing, and then philosophical conversation. So looks for a very good reading. And again, as I said, instead of this copying this, take inspiration from this. तो ऐसा आप अपनी लाइफ के बारे में क्या शेयर कर सकते हो that will talk about who you are. So चाय या philosophical conversations की जगह it can very well be coffee, it can be something else, but take inspiration की इन lines पे आप कुछ create कर सकते हो. If you have watched a particular television series, for example Ramayana by Ramanand Sagar multiple times, then you can mention this. It could be any other TV series or a movie that you have watched. I've attended all the international cricket matches hosted in my city. So, for example, I belong to Indore, and Indore mein there have been few international cricket matches that have been hosted. So, if I have actually experienced all the cricket matches by going to the stadium, I think this is something which is very interesting part of my personality that I can share. कि इंदौर में जितने matches हुए, and as we speak, tomorrow 14th को second T20 international है इंडिया और इसके बीच में I'm sure all of us know. So इंदौर में there is another second T20 international happening. तो ऐसा कुछ अगर इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट है, किसी पर्टिकुलर स्पोर्ट को आप फॉलो करते हो. वन ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स सजेस्टेड और आस्क्ड कि फॉर इंडिया ऑस्ट्रेलिया सीरीज डाउन अंडर आई यूज्ड टू गेट अप एट 3 o'clock in the morning to watch those matches because odd times पे होते हैं. कई बार आप यूरोपियन क्लब्स को फॉलो करते हो और फुटबॉल के मैचेस बहुत odd times पे होते हैं. तो you have actually slept early and got up in the middle of the night to watch some of these games can be an interesting fun thing about you that you can share. So SPJIMR का form is very different from some of the other forms. Please include all these details without any inhibitions, as long as they're in a formal tone, they tell some or the other aspect of your personality. तो बिल्कुल आप इसको include कर सकते हो. I've stayed in 7 different cities for more than a year each. Maybe because your parents had a transferable job. आपकी schooling अलग-अलग cities में हुई है. You've stayed in different states, different regions. तो ऐसा कुछ considerable activity है जो आप share कर सकते हो in terms of staying in different places. If you can speak multiple languages, if you can speak 3 languages fluently, 4 languages fluently, so maybe English is there, Hindi is there, one of them can be your mother tongue. Maybe you've learned French, German, Spanish, Mandarin, anything on these lines. या संस्कृत आपके करिकुलम का हिस्सा था and you can speak few Sanskrit shloks very fluently, or you can explain the meanings of some of these Sanskrit shlok. So anything on these lines you can include. So take inspiration from this part. I consider drawing a cathartic activity. So maybe you're very interested in a particular hobby. You can include that in a different way, saying that it's more of a cathartic activity. It tends to clean your soul. तो ऐसा कुछ इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट भी आप इंक्लूड कर सकते हो. वेयर सम एक्टिविटीज, फॉर एग्जांपल, आई नो दिस फॉर अ फैक्ट दैट बेकिंग गिव्स अ लॉट ऑफ पीस, हैप्पीनेस and getting away from a state of sadness or depression for a lot of people, especially girls and women, because they're more into cooking. Not stereotyping, but generally this is a common response that I've heard. So there might be a lot of activities that take you away from that feeling of sadness in terms of hobby. So maybe you can include such parts. I've read over 100 non-academic books so far in the last 3 years. Anything on these lines. ऐसा कुछ आप interesting लिख सकते हो. You have a fabulous collection of few things. So maybe antiques का collection करने की आदत है, stamps collection करने की आदत है. I remember I used to have this hobby of cutting cricketers के stickers from newspapers. So newspaper में जो भी news आती है, suppose सचिन तेंदुलकर has scored a century, तो वो century में एक सचिन तेंदुलकर का बड़ा सा cutout I used to cut from a paper and have a collection. And it typically became a very, very bulky book, but it was something which was very interesting and an important part of what I used to do in my free time when I used to follow cricket. So ऐसी कुछ चीजें हैं जो आप definitely include कर सकते हो. Collection है books का. Maybe you are an avid reader और आपके घर में ही खुद की एक छोटी library है जहाँ पे you have n number of different books across categories. तो वो आप include कर सकते हो. As I said, stamp collection hobby रहती है कुछ लोगों की. कुछ और पर्टिकुलर एक्टिविटी रिलेटेड, कुछ कलेक्शन ऑफ स्पोर्ट्स गैजेट्स हो सकता है, डिफरेंट वीडियो गेम्स हो सकते हैं, डिफरेंट मोबाइल फोन सेट्स हो सकते हैं कि जब वो पहले के जमाने के मोबाइल फोन थे, नोकिया 1100 मेरे पास आज भी रखा हुआ है. सो मे बी यू हैव दिस हॉबी ऑफ कलेक्टिंग डिफरेंट हैंडसेट्स, एनीथिंग दैट यू फील कैन बी अ पार्ट ऑफ एन इंटरेस्टिंग रीड in terms of random thing that you'll want to share. Last part, as an example, I volunteered for traffic cop duties multiple times. So in terms of activities which are slightly different, maybe you have realized कि traffic generally बहुत बड़ा issue रहता है आपकी city में, almost हर city में है. So then you'll feel कि what have I done, and then you have approached the local municipal corporation, and as part of maybe a college activity or anything on these lines, you have volunteered to be a traffic manager in your own capacity. तो आपने traffic manage करा है. कुछ इस तरह की interesting चीजें करी हो that you feel can be a part of this, please include this. My strong suggestion, if you think hard enough, you'll be able to come up with very interesting 10 random things that you can share about your own self. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं. So this was the first question. I think we are done with this first part. Second question पे चलते हैं, which is state one experience in your formative years that you remember up to 18 years of age. तो 18 साल की एज तक का लिमिट बोला है. फॉर्मेटिव ईयर्स वुड मीन योर ग्रोइंग अप ईयर्स, बचपन से बड़े होते हुए जो भी आपके एक्सपीरियंस रहे, एंड हाउ इट इम्पैक्टेड यू एज अ पर्सन. तो एक एक्सपीरियंस शेयर करना है. वर्ड लिमिट इसकी कितनी है? हर एक क्वेश्चन के लिए वर्ड लिमिट इज 150 वर्ड्स. 150 वर्ड्स टिपिकली वुड मीन 3 पैराग्राफ्स. 3 पैराग्राफ्स का आंसर आप लिख सकते हो. 50 वर्ड्स का एक रफ पैराग्राफ बन जाता है. तो 3 पैराग्राफ्स में आपको लिखना क्या है? वन एक्सपीरियंस इन योर फॉर्मेटिव ईयर्स दैट यू रिमेंबर, जो आपको याद है. ऐसा कुछ पर्टिकुलर इंसिडेंट that you can recall or remember, and how that particular experience impacted you as a person. अब इस पार्ट को लेके चलते हैं कि ऐसा क्या सोचें, इसमें क्या लिखें, ऐसा कौन सा एक्सपीरियंस हो सकता है. तो थिंक इट थ्रू. द बेस्ट वे टू जनरेट आइडियाज इज टू टॉक टू पीपल ड्यूरिंग योर फॉर्मेटिव एज जिनका इम्पैक्ट रहा. सो नंबर वन कुड बी अ पेरेंट्स. तो आप अपने पेरेंट्स के साथ बैठो, डिस्कशन करो कि आपकी लाइफ में ऐसे क्या क्या इंटरेस्टिंग चीजें हुई हैं जो उनको याद है आपके बारे में हुई हैं. So you'll get some ideas from there. Talk to friends from childhood. आपके बचपन के जो दोस्त हैं जिनके साथ आपकी अपब्रिंगिंग हुई है, it can be siblings, it can be friends from school, it can be friends from locality, anyone. It could be cousin. So uh, experience ढूंढने के लिए during your formative years, my strong recommendation will be कि आप उन लोगों से बात करो जिनके साथ आप बहुत क्लोज रहे हो in your formative years, और जब आप उनसे डिस्कशन करोगे you'll get ideas. And then share that kind of an idea that how this particular experience impacted you. Just to give you some perspective, इसमें मेक श्योर वंस यू अंडरस्टैंड कि आपने एक एक्सपीरियंस ढूंढ लिया है, तो अलग अलग कैटेगरी बेस्ड ये पर्सपेक्टिव या इंसिडेंट हो सकता है. इट कुड बी एन एक्सपीरियंस वेयर you would say that there was a big emotional impact because of the death of somebody very close. So फैमिली में किसी बहुत क्लोज पर्सन की डेथ हो गई है, उसका इम्पैक्ट पड़ा, एंड देन दिस इज द एक्सपीरियंस दैट यू वांट टू शेयर. मे बी while traveling you got away from the family for a certain amount of time, and that particular event has left a big impact and the way you approach things. So फैमिली के साथ कहीं पिकनिक पे गए थे, वेकेशन पे गए थे, and then you were left alone for a period of let's say 3 to 4 hours, and you had lost connect with your family members for some reason, maybe in a temple or somewhere else, and then you had to be searched, and mic pe announcement hua, and then your parents came down and picked you. Anything that you feel created an impact, जो भी आपकी लाइफ में ऐसा कुछ इंटरेस्टिंग इवेंट हुआ है जिसने कोई ऐसा इम्पैक्ट करा हो जो आपको याद रहा, तो आप शेयर करना चाहोगे. जस्ट शेयरिंग फ्यू इंस्टेंसेस टू हेल्प यू जनरेट आइडियाज, बट आई थिंक ये क्वेश्चन मैनेजेबल है. The next question is slightly more challenging. Recall a significant incident in your life that left a mark similar to the one here, but that required you to deal with innovatively or with a mindset change. Now, what do you mean by mindset change? जिस तरीके से हम चीजों को अप्रोच करते हैं, the mindset that we have, you completely or partially change that mindset because of that incident, because otherwise उस mindset से वो solve ही नहीं हो रहा था. A lot of times solutions to problems can come just by this one thought, which is mindset change. है ना, कई बार I'll give you an example. A lot of people in their college graduation tend to be very relaxed in their regular routine, and they tend to sleep for close to 8 hours, 9 hours, इस तरह के different amount of sleeping hours रहते हैं स्टूडेंट्स के. Come the first trimester of an MBA program, you are expected to sleep on an average in some of the top B schools of the country for 4 hours. अब 4 से 5 घंटे सोने को मिल रहा है फॉर समवन हु यूज्ड टू स्लीप 8, 9, 10 hours पर डे ऑन एन एवरेज. 10 घंटे से सीधे 4 घंटे, 6 घंटे का लॉस ऑफ स्लीप पर डे is a big change. How is it that despite that 4 to 5 hours of sleep, students are able to function normally? It is nothing more than a mindset change. कि एक mindset ही बदल गया. You live in an ecosystem where everybody is doing the same. At 3 o'clock in the night, you are going to your typical canteen and having Maggie or coffee or whatever. और आप असाइनमेंट के बारे में डिस्कशन कर रहे हो कि कल सुबह 7 बजे क्या करना है, 8 बजे क्या करना है, यू आर प्लेइंग टीटी इन कॉलेज, कुछ भी कर रहे हो. बट ये जो चेंज है कि आप 9-10 घंटे की नींद से सीधे 4 घंटे की नींद पे जा पा रहे हो, ये सिर्फ इसलिए पॉसिबल है क्योंकि आपने अपना माइंडसेट बदल लिया है. तो आइडेंटिफाई एन इंसिडेंट इन योर लाइफ दैट लेफ्ट अ मार्क. तो ऐसा क्या इंसिडेंट आप शेयर कर सकते हो जिसने माइंडसेट चेंज प्रॉम्प्ट करा हो, या जिसके कारण यू हैड टू डील विद इट इनोवेटिवली. व्हेन यू से इनोवेटिवली, थिंकिंग आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स, थिंकिंग क्रिएटिवली, कुछ नया सोचना पड़ा, रन ऑफ द मिल सिचुएशन नहीं थी. तो ऐसा कोई ना कोई इंसिडेंट या इवेंट आपको सोचना पड़ेगा अपनी लाइफ का जहां चीजों ने एक डिफरेंट टर्न ऑफ थिंग्स ले लिया. मे बी यू वेर अ वेरी शाय एंड इंट्रोवर्टेड पर्सन अर्लियर, but because of a certain event, mindset change hua, now you are completely opposite of what you were earlier. Maybe you are someone who used to follow a lot of rules, and you were very to the point, believing in rules, following order, and because of some or the other event you became more of a rebel, which happens to a lot of people. Vice versa, rebel से वो normal बन जाते हैं या normal से rebel बन जाते हैं. So if you are someone who for a period of time used to break every rule that you were एबल टू ब्रेक, तो इस तरह का माइंडसेट चेंज हुआ या आपने कुछ चीजें करी टू सॉल्व अ पर्टिकुलर प्रॉब्लम. सो आइडेंटिफाई सम ऑफ दीज थिंग्स दैट यू कैन इंक्लूड इन योर लाइफ. कीप इट एज प्रोफेशनल एज पॉसिबल, बट देयर इज नो रीजन फॉर यू टू कीप इट प्रोफेशनल. पर्सनल लाइफ के इंसिडेंट्स भी आप डेफिनेटली शेयर कर सकते हो. What role do you usually play in a team? Again, a very interesting and a slightly challenging question. Leader, collaborator or supporter, and can you provide an example that highlights your approach? तो आपको बताना है कि आप टिपिकली एक टीम में कौन सा रोल प्ले करते हो यूजुअली। आप लीडर बनते हो, आप कोलैबोरेटर रहते हो या आप सपोर्टर रहते हो। तो फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट थिंग दैट यू आर एक्सपेक्टेड टू डू इज अंडरस्टैंड द मीनिंग ऑफ दीज टर्म्स। अंडरस्टैंड द मीनिंग ऑफ दीज टर्म्स वुड मीन, सबसे पहले समझो कि लीडर का मतलब क्या है, कोलैबोरेटर का मतलब क्या है, सपोर्टर का मतलब क्या है, और इन तीनों में डिफरेंस क्या है, और आप टीम में किस तरह के रोल्स यूजुअली प्ले करते हो। देन यू विल पुट योरसेल्फ इन डिफरेंट टीम्स दैट यू हैव बीन अ पार्ट ऑफ। तो सबसे अच्छा तरीका टू आइडेंटिफाई हाउ टू आंसर दिस क्वेश्चन इज टू आइडेंटिफाई व्हाट ऑल टीम्स यू आर अ पार्ट ऑफ। बचपन से अभी तक आप एन नंबर ऑफ डिफरेंट टीम्स के पार्ट थे। डोंट ऑलवेज थिंक कि कॉलेज में प्रोजेक्ट मिला है उसमें टीम साइज 4 थी या टीम साइज 3 थी, उस टीम की हम बात कर रहे हैं। Even a small activity like going for a movie together with your friends is a team activity. तो वो जो टीम एक्टिविटी थी जहां पे यू डिसाइडेड दैट यू विल गो एंड वॉच अ मूवी टुगेदर, उस मूवी का इनिशियल डिस्कशन किसने लाया कि चलो इस संडे शाम को 6 बजे हम पिक्चर देखने जाएंगे। तो व्हेन यू come up with such an idea, this is typically the role of a leader, somebody who initiates. So are you someone who in a group of friends takes this leadership role where you initiate things? क्या आप वो पर्सन हो जो डिसाइड करता है कौन कहाँ किस जगह क्या एक्टिविटी करेंगे? तो ये एक सबसे अच्छा बेंचमार्क हो जाता है कि इन अ ग्रुप ऑफ 4-5 पीपल, इफ यू फील दैट करस्पॉन्डिंग टू वट एवर एक्टिविटीज वी हैव बीन अ पार्ट ऑफ एज अ ग्रुप वर्क और अ टीम वर्क, हमने क्या रोल प्ले करा है। सो जब आप इस तरह की चीजें सोचोगे बचपन से लेकर अभी तक, यू विल फाइंड दैट यू हैव बीन अ पार्ट ऑफ मल्टीपल टीम्स, एंड टीम्स typically may not always be a team of friends or colleagues. It could be a team of family members. So as a planning for a vacation, 4-5 people have planned a vacation together. What was your role at different stages of your life? As a result, now you'll realize once you think it through that काफी सारे ऐसे इवेंट्स में आप रहोगे कि आई वॉज मोर ऑफ अ लीडर, काफी सारे इवेंट्स में आई वॉज मोर ऑफ अ कोलैबोरेटर एंड सपोर्टर एंड सो ऑन। तो यू कैन शेयर मल्टीपल एक्सपीरियंसेस बिकॉज अगेन आपके पास जो वर्ड लिमिट है वो 150 वर्ड्स है। Maybe you can share experience where you played the role of a leader. Maybe you can share an experience where you played the role of a collaborator as well, and sometimes a supporter. अब broad level पे समझ ले तीनों का difference। लीडर के important parts जब आप इन तीन कैटेगरीज में देखोगे तो one part is about initiation, कोई भी particular चीज initiate करी क्या आपने, are you someone who initiates? Second part, somebody who takes responsibility and ownership of making the end result getting achieved. So responsibility वाला part is something which is very important. Think of any particular sport and the role of a captain. तो लीडर का रोल वो कैप्टन वाला रोल है। अगर टीम हार गई तो प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में कैप्टन को बोलना पड़ेगा, यू नो द बॉयज प्लेड वेल बट अल्टीमेटली वी लॉस्ट। और अगर टीम जीत गई तो भी कैप्टन को ही पहले बुलाया जाएगा फॉर द ट्रॉफी, एंड इफ यू आर एन एमएस धोनी मे बी यू विल आस्क द youngest teammate to come forward and collect the trophy. That's another matter, but ultimately Dhoni is the leader there, Dhoni is the captain there. अगर मैच हारा तो भी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी धोनी की है, मैच जीता तो भी एक्कोलेट पहले धोनी को मिलेगा। सो एज अ लीडर typically the second important aspect is taking ownership and responsibility of your actions for your team. तो आप टीम के बिहाफ पे बोलोगे। जनरली अ गुड लीडर विल से कि अगर अच्छा हुआ तो टीम अच्छी थी इसलिए हुआ, और अगर कुछ खराब हो गया तो मे बी आई डिड नॉट लीड द टीम वेल। सो लीडर विल प्ले दैट काइंड ऑफ अ रोल वेयर हिल back the team, support the team, cover their mistakes to a certain extent, and take more ownership of the mistakes on his part, and so on and stuff. Third part is vision, कि वो जो टीम एक्टिविटी थी उसमें आपका विजन क्या था, what was the vision that you had, आपके दिमाग में चीजें थी आगे के फ्यूचर के लिए। So in n number of different activities that you've been a part of, think on these lines कि आपने लीडर वाला रोल प्ले करा है क्या, लीडर वाले रोल में रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ली है क्या, इनिशिएट करा है क्या, आपने विजन या डायरेक्शन दी है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल समटाइम्स थिंक ऑफ इट दिस वे कि जब हम ग्रुप में प्लान करते हैं कोई भी एक्टिविटी, लेट्स से वॉचिंग अ मूवी टुगेदर, तो कुछ लोग ऐसे होंगे जो मना करेंगे नहीं ये पिक्चर नहीं देखते, इस थिएटर में नहीं जाएंगे, इस टाइम पे नहीं जाएंगे। हु इज द वन पर्सन हु गिव्स डायरेक्शन कि नहीं अच्छा ये प्रॉब्लम आ रही है, लेट मी सॉल्व दिस, तो वो मैं देख लूंगा। somebody who is able to understand and tackle different situations and come up with this ownership कि मैं देख लूंगा, this is again a sign of a leader. So leader के वाले parts हो गए। Then who is typically a collaborator? Typically in a lot of teamwork you'll find that there are people who are very good at execution. When you say people who are very good at execution would mean what? आप उनको टास्क दे दो, दे विल नॉट टेक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी और इनिशिएट फॉर देयर ओन वेरी रीजंस। बट अगर उनको बोल दिया कि ये काम है कल सुबह 10 बजे तक करना है, देयर इज अ गुड चांस कि शायद वो आज रात को ही 8-9 बजे तक खत्म करके सबमिट कर देंगे, क्योंकि उनको टास्क मिल गया। दे आर टास्क ओरिएंटेड। somebody who is given a particular task to execute will execute it to the best of his or her abilities। वैसे वाले पर्सन को बोलेंगे कोलैबोरेटर। जो कोलैबोरेट कर रहा है, अगर टास्क मिल जाता है, टीम में है, तो बहुत अच्छा काम करेगा, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी भी शेयर करेगा, बट नॉट एज मच रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी एज अ लीडर। So collaborator will be second to the leader, so to say, in a typical team in terms of taking responsibilities, but execution typically will be the main role. Execution typically will be the main role. He will also be a face of the team to a certain extent. Primary face obviously will be the leader, but collaborator will help, support, will play a second fiddle, if I can use that term. Think of a vice captain's role. प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में वाइस कैप्टन बहुत रेयरली जाएगा, बट जाएगा कभी जरूरत पड़ी तो। कैप्टन इंजर्ड हो गया तो वाइस कैप्टन विल प्ले अ इंपॉर्टेंट रोल। तो कोलैबोरेटर कैन इन सर्टेन टाइम्स बिकम अ लीडर एज वेल। तो ये वाले पार्ट को ध्यान रख के आपको ये सोचना है कि आर यू समवन हु इज अ गुड कोलैबोरेटर, कि ठीक है सारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी मुझे मत दो, रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी मुझे मत दो, मैं इनिशिएट नहीं करूंगा, बट मैं टीम का बहुत इंटीग्रल पार्ट रहूंगा। एंड व्हाट इज द टिपिकल रोल ऑफ अ सपोर्टर, एज द नेम सजेस्ट, प्राइमरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी या ओनरशिप में तीसरे नंबर पे आएगा आउट ऑफ द थ्री। तो कोलैबोरेटर जितनी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं लेगा, सपोर्टर विल प्ले थर्ड फिडल, will have a specific way to support. It can be through financial support, it can just be through moral support. For example, we say parents have been our greatest supporters, but जब एग्जाम लिखनी है तब उन्होंने शायद आपको पढ़ाया ना हो, है ना, उन्होंने शायद आपकी क्लासेस नहीं ली हो, उन्होंने किसी और तरीके से डायरेक्ट हेल्प ना करी हो, बट शायद इनडायरेक्टली दे वेर योर बिगेस्ट चीयर लीडर्स एंड सपोर्टर्स। सो सपोर्टर वाला जो पार्ट है वो टीम में वो रोल प्ले करेगा, वेयर यू नो दैट इफ देयर इज एनी नीड देयर इज दिस पर्सन टू फॉल बैक अपॉन। तो हमेशा हर टीम में आपको कैसे मिलेंगे कि अगर कुछ जरूरत लगी, यार दिस एक्स पर्सन इज अवेलेबल। सो इन अ टिपिकल टीम वर्क, are you someone who plays that role of a supporter where you support people in terms of moral support, in terms of economic or financial support, in terms of giving a helping hand, making sure the team works together, identifying grievances and working on them। तो इस तरह का रोल टिपिकली सपोर्टर का रहेगा, which is slightly lesser than that of a collaborator। सारे रोल्स बहुत अच्छे हैं। तो अगर आपका माइंडसेट ऐसा कुछ बनेगा कि सर आप इसमें से क्लियरली लाइंस पे तो ऐसा लग रहा है कि लीडर का अगर हम शेयर करेंगे तो दिस विल फेच अस ब्राउनी पॉइंट्स एंड विल हेल्प अस कन्वर्ट द कॉल, नो, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है। डिसाइड फॉर योरसेल्फ व्हाट काइंड ऑफ अ रोल यू प्ले। जेन्युइनली आप रिकॉल करो इंस्टेंसेस कि आप किस तरह का आपका बिहेवियर रहता है, वो किस जगह कैटेगराइज होगा, और इसीलिए उन्होंने लिख दिया है व्हाट रोल डू यू यूजुअली प्ले, बिकॉज एवरी पर्सन फॉर श्योर वुड प्ले ऑल थ्री रोल्स, है ना। हर पर्सन तीनों तरह के रोल्स प्ले करेगा अलग अलग टीम्स में, बट आप जनरली किस तरह का रोल प्ले करते हो वो जानना चाह रहे हैं। सो आई थिंक दीज आर द ब्रॉड 4 level questions। आई थिंक वी हैव वन रिकरिंग क्वेश्चन विच इज अबाउट लखनऊ इंटरव्यू being on 31st and how to prepare। I think I've already recorded a session on I'm Lucknow ka form filling। Once you've filled the form, the best way to prepare is to understand the kind of cross questions that would come on the corresponding form and then prepare। Also request, if you're already enrolled, then request for a mock interview, request for a mentoring session। You'll get a one-to-one mentoring session and mock interview session for people who are already enrolled in the AdmitSure course। So I think you can raise the issue there as well। Okay, so this completes our discussion for the all-important Form B part of the SPJIMR form। So SPJIMR में admission के लिए please take due care। Remember the deadline। The deadline was 16th of January। Book the slot, first come first serve basis पे, and hopefully you will be on the other side of the table come this June। So June में जब batch start होगा SPJIMR का 24 वाला, so I hope all of you are watching this video to be on the other side of the table and attending classes there। With this, I'll take your leave। Ciao।